Hey cats, what's happening? It is a cold one today. You saw the thermometer there downstairs. Outdoor temperature is almost -3. I think it was -3 when we first got up this morning. So cold weather. I pulled up this wind chill chart on the internet here real quick, and it's a cheesy motorcycle wind chill chart. But if you look along the top here, it starts at 15 degrees, 20, 25, and goes all the way up to 60 degrees. So that's, you know, it's not a complete chart. And then over here you have your riding speed. So let's just say if you're only going 25 miles an hour at 15 degrees, it's -4. So it's already, the outdoor temperature is already -3. And it's supposed to get colder today too, so I couldn't imagine what wind chill would be on the bike. I couldn't get my bike out of the driveway anyway. It snowed, and then we drove in and out of there with the vehicle, so it packed it, and then it rained. So all the way down our 650-foot driveway is like glare ice. When you drive down there with the four-wheel drive, you can feel it like sliding off on the sides. But anyway, this cold weather reminds me of some cold riding that I have done in the past, and I thought I would share those stories. One particular journey, it was way back in the 70s. I had this group, this little kind of fly by the seat of your pants club that I called the Pack, and there was probably about a half dozen of us. Well, I think maybe it was mid-March, maybe late March, and the weather was up probably in the 60s for that particular weekend, and we thought, oh great, let's take a motorcycle ride and let's go camping. Well, I don't know how brilliant that was. We got on the bikes and we rode, I don't know, probably a couple hundred miles, and got to a state park where we set up our camp. Now, being that it was early spring, the ground was pretty mushy and wet to begin with, and we found that, you know, by sleeping on the ground or laying on the ground, it was still pretty cold. So it wasn't a very comfortable camp. Now, we've got a little campfire going and stuff, and cooked over the fire, and then it started drizzling rain. So our tent camping was rather miserable for that night. Got up in the morning, it was still raining, and the temperature started to drop, and we had a couple hundred miles to ride back home. So we packed up everything and hit the road. Now, back in those days, we flew by the seat of our pants quite often, so we weren't really prepared for the weather. None of us had rain gear, and we started riding home. I don't even know if we made it 100 miles and we had to stop. It was just so cold and still raining, but the rain was soaking through our clothes at that point. And my knees had locked up basically where I could barely get off the bike. We stopped at a convenience type gas station, and we went inside, and they didn't have any rain gear or anything like that we could even purchase. I think somebody might have found one of those little $2 ponchos or something, but you know how that wouldn't hold up on a motorcycle. Well, I ended up buying some trash bags, a box of heavy-duty trash bags, and a roll of duct tape. And we actually duct taped trash bags and made trash bag chaps and put them inside of our jacket on the front to try to keep our torsos warm or dry to the best extent that we could. And then we rode the rest of the way home wrapped in trash bags that were shredding and flapping in the wind at 50 miles an hour. I don't think we went any faster than that because of the chill factor. So saying if it was, I think the temperatures dropped down into the 40s. If it was 45 degrees at 50 mile an hour, we're talking 33 degrees, so just a hair above freezing, the chill factor in that regard. That was a terrible, terrible ride. Now another ride that I did, and I did this one with V, we were full members of a Rolling Thunder, and at that time we were taking a ride to Washington, D.C. to go to the Wall. And when we left, it wasn't too bad. The weather wasn't too bad, but from Ohio to get to Washington, D.C., you have to go over the Allegheny Mountains, or you go up in altitude, and then you drop back down towards the East Coast. Well, as we came up into the mountains, it became very cold, and the temperatures dropped. I think they were in the upper 30s, somewhere in there. It was really, really cold. And to make it even worse, because of the temperature drop, it turned into fog. And I'll never remember how frightened we were as we rode in this thick, dense fog through these mountains. You could barely see the taillight of the motorcycle in front of you. Now, as I remember, I think we probably had at least a dozen bikes in that group, but I could barely see a headlight in my rearview mirror, and I could barely see the taillight of the bike ahead of me. So that was all you had to go by. You could see this edge of the road and the taillight in front of you, so you just had to kind of follow that taillight and just pray that nothing up ahead of that would happen, because if there was an accident or something, it would have been really difficult to see far enough ahead to stop safely. And I don't think we were going very fast either. I think our top speed was probably 40 miles, maybe 45 miles an hour, because of the thick, dense fog. It was so dangerous. And we were also worried about vehicles coming up behind us and plowing into the back of us too, because that was a real danger. As we come over the top of the mountains, though, it started to clear up. We came down, we dropped down out of the altitude, and the temperatures began to come up a little bit, and then we had to stop and warm up at a truck stop. It was cold, you know. And when you get that cold, you can't even hardly think straight. And like me, my knees usually lock up when they get so cold. I just can't even hardly walk. So I was walking kind of hunched over with a limp even, just trying to get the blood circulating back into my legs. That was some of the coldest weather I've ridden in. I've taken shorter rides in cold temperatures. I remember back years ago when we used to ride up to the biker bar, and you'd go up there in the early evening, and you'd stay up there all night, and come closing time, when it came time to leave, you would literally have to scrape the frost off of your windshield and your seat to go home. It would be so cold. But it wasn't very far ride from the biker bar to here. Within 15-20 minutes I was back home again and getting warm, so that was tolerable. But the longer rides, boy, if you're not prepared, you're in trouble. Now, I know some of the more laid out bikes have where you can plug in heated gear, heated gloves, heated jackets, heated trousers or whatever, that can keep you very comfortable. Some of them even channel the heat from the engine back through the vents to try to give you a little more heat. But us guys that have the smaller bikes that don't have the big fairings and everything, you're pretty much exposed to the cold when you ride in the cold weather. I see some pictures online too of bikers that will ride all year round, even in the snow, if they can handle it. In fact, there was a recent picture online of a Hell's Angel riding with a wheel extension out to the side to keep him from falling. I thought that was pretty funny. But it probably worked well, and that way he can ride, you know, in the winter weather on the icy roads without dropping the bike or killing himself. So, if you got some stories, share them. Leave them in the comments below. I'd like to hear them. I always like to hear you guys' stories of riding in cold weather. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button, like my videos. If you really like them, share them with your friends. Tell them about it, and like to see what their comments are as well. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe, and I'll be sure to entertain you with many more wonderful stories. Till next time, cats, ride hard and die free.